Welcome back to National Report. Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe warning about China's attempts to influence U.S. officials. In an open letter to the public, Ratcliffe writes, quote, "Our intelligence shows that Beijing regularly directs this type of influence operation in the U.S. I briefed the House and Senate Intelligence Committees that China is targeting members of Congress with 6 times the frequency of Russia and 12 times the frequency of Iran." At the same time, Chinese officials are accused of taking down a recently recorded lecture showing a Chinese Communist Party expert explaining how Beijing used to have a lot of people at the top of America's core inner circle before Donald Trump was elected. Chang is the author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War, and he joins us now. Gordon, it's great to see you. I guess based on these recent reports from DNI Ratcliffe, as well as this video that has surfaced and now is no longer accessible, how long has China really been working on this influence campaign? And tell me about how strong their reach is on U.S. politics.
Well, China's been working on the influence campaign against the United States since perhaps the 1980s. It's intensified recently, and it's directed at all levels of the U.S. government, as well as local and state governments. And it's also directed at the media, NGOs, all sorts of institutions throughout the U.S. This is a broad-based effort. It's been going on for decades, and it's massive.
Yeah, that's quite concerning, of course. And there's also a new report out by Axios that alleges a Chinese spy was able to infiltrate into several U.S. politicians, one of those offices being Congressman Eric Swalwell. How are you reading into this report? Do you believe that he could be compromised based on what this report alleges?
Yeah, the important thing from this report is it shows that Beijing has been going after low-level government officials because Swalwell was a council member of a municipality then. And it's just hoped that people like Swalwell would actually rise, go to Congress, and in his case, sit on the Intelligence Committee. Now, I don't know if he's been compromised, but the point is he has been carrying a Beijing narrative for the last several years because he talks about how it's Russia, 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 and he downplays the threat from China. Now, I don't know whether this is intentional, but clearly this is something that is just music to Beijing's ears.
Apparently, he had alerted the FBI concerns about Ms. Fang as well, but it makes you wonder, in fact, how much information could she have access to? Again, the report alleges that she was working closely with several U.S. politicians, maybe fundraising money for them, getting closer within their inner circle. As you mentioned, Congressman Swalwell sits on that House Intel Committee. Do you think she could have access to what our congressmen and women could have access to?
At the time, she probably had something. I don't know if it's of much value, but what Beijing does is it just sends out a number of people into the U.S., probably in the hundreds of thousands. And essentially, it just collects little bits of information and brings them back to China and correlates them. So something that we would think would be unimportant could actually be significant in some sense. It's tourists, students, business people, all sorts of folks from China are used for this 1,000 grain of sands approach. And clearly, Christine Fang was part of that.
Yeah, allegedly she was maybe 30 years old at the time and was being a college student enrolled in college. So that maybe should have raised a few red flags there, looked into something. Nevertheless, again, it makes you wonder, too, who's appointing, Eric Swalwell to that role on the House Intel Committee? You'd look at Nancy Pelosi as well. I guess the main question is who knew what and when? I don't know what should be the next step in your best advice should be taken in order to really get to the bottom of this.
Well, I think that clearly U.S. intelligence services, the FBI, CIA, are just overwhelmed. Law enforcement is just on the back foot when it comes to China. And really what it means is that we've got to get China's agents out of the U.S. And that means closing the 4 remaining Chinese consulates, cutting back the embassy staff, going after the Chinese banks and enterprises that have facilities in the U.S. We just need to get them out of our country until we can get a hold of this. We've got to remember, Emma, that China's 2017 national intelligence law requires every Chinese national to spy for Beijing if demanded. And indeed, under the Communist Party's top-down system, even without that national intelligence law, they require to do what the party dictates. So we've got a problem with Chinese nationals in the U.S. Not all of them, like Christine Fong, are working for the Ministry of State Security, but nonetheless, they are a danger to the existence of our republic.
Yeah, just a fascinating report coming out. We'll continue to follow that. Meantime, I want to switch gears and talk to you about Georgia Governor Brian Kemp getting a lot of new attention over a recent video he did touting Georgia's relationship with China. Take a look.
China is a top source for imports and our third largest export market. We welcome thousands of Chinese visitors every year to the Peach State, and we are constantly helping to develop new opportunities for Chinese companies.
Gordon, do you have any sort of context for that video, maybe the reasoning behind it or the influence that China could be trying to send through, again, a U.S. governor?
Yeah, who's a Republican, by the way. Really, China has tried to use trade relationships with states, with localities to extend its influence. And in this particular case, Brian Kemp, the governor, actually met with the Houston Consulate General while that consulate was still open. And afterwards, Georgia then bought Dominion voting machines, which at the time of our election were partly owned by China. So, this really shows that the influence of China extends across the political spectrum, both parties, and we've got to remove it bit by bit. And part of it is, and I know Americans aren't going to like to hear this, but China is using its commerce as a way to endanger our national security. And that means as much as we'd like to sell things to China, as much as we'd like to have tourists from China, this is ultimately a threat.
Final question for you here. New reporting also from Axios that former South Bend mayor, who also ran for president, Pete Buttigieg, being considered as an ambassador for China under a Biden administration. What qualifies him for that role?
Nothing that I can see. The ambassador ultimately is not that important. China policy is made in Washington. But you need somebody on the ground who has the right attitude, who is going to defend the United States and understands the maliciousness of the Chinese regime. I don't know very much about Buttigieg. He didn't talk about China during the campaign. He was affiliated with McKinsey, which has a very disturbing relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. He wouldn't be at the top of my list, but nonetheless, we're just going to have to, he's going to have to go through a Senate confirmation period. And I think it's going to be pretty hard for Buttigieg if he really is the nominee.
Well, fascinating analysis. Great as always to talk with you. Gordon Chang joining us live here on the program. Gordon, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Emma.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.
现在我们看到拜登上台了，传统的精英、政治精英啊，这个建制派。 他们跟华尔街的关系是非常密切的，所以大家看到吧，拜登的儿子被特朗普说你在全球有什么基金公司，发现没有？谁帮他建的基金公司啊？明白吗？这里边都有买卖啊。那么